Welcome to another episode of the MemcycoFM show. Today we're pulling back the curtain on something really quite insidious, and it's evolving fast. Remote access scams. Now, for many CISOs listening, these might still sound like those old tech support scams, but they're really not anymore. They represent a sophisticated and often hidden path to account takeover. And that really challenges our traditional security thinking, doesn't it? We're here to unpack not just what they are, but why they seem to slip past so many existing controls.
Absolutely. And, the complexity can feel a bit overwhelming at first glance, but our goal today for this deep dive is really to dissect the attacker's playbook, understand how it works, and then pivot straight to actionable, proactive defense strategies. We'll unpack how they manipulate users, how they evade systems, yes, but crucially, we want to equip you with the insights, maybe even some tools, to detect and disrupt them in real time. This isn't about, fear-mongering. It's genuinely about empowerment, giving you that strategic edge.
That's the mission here.
Go for it.
To give you a shortcut, really, to being incredibly well-informed on this specific threat. So you'll walk away, understand the problem, yes, but also armed with some innovative ways to fortify your organization's defenses and digital trust, ultimately. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's dive right in. When we talk about remote access scams, what are we really talking about today? Because like I said, many still picture those, crude pop-ups saying your computer has a virus. It's moved way beyond that, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Way beyond. These are highly evolved social engineering attacks. The fraudsters are incredibly clever at persuading users to or maybe just open legitimate remote desktop tools. Things like TeamViewer or AnyDesk, tools businesses use every day. The genius of it, and frankly the scary part, is that it's impersonation fraud, where the victim, well, they unknowingly become the accomplice. It's not about brute forcing a system, it's about being invited in, often by someone the user thinks they can trust.
That's a really critical distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the wolf isn't just at the door
Yeah.
and handed the keys. So what's the big strategic implication here when an attacker is actually operating through a legitimate user session?
Well, that's what's truly fascinating and deeply concerning for security teams. It creates what we call a hidden path to account takeover, ATO. See, once an attacker gets that remote access to a user's device, they can hijack login flows. They harvest credentials right under the user's nose sometimes. And they can even bypass multi-factor authentication, not by technically breaking MFA,
Right.
but by manipulating the victim into providing that second factor themselves. Oh, just type in this code to secure your account. So the key insight here, especially for CISOs, is that your traditional fraud controls, they often miss this entirely because the attacker is essentially riding shotgun on the user's own legitimate session. Your systems see, trusted behavior from a trusted device, when in reality, there's a covert operation happening right there. And this fundamentally challenges how we think about, account takeover protection, credential theft prevention, even brand impersonation. It touches all of them.
That's a really profound point. The security system itself is kind of being gaslit. It thinks everything is normal. So, okay, how do these scams, these meticulously choreographed scams, usually unfold? Can you walk us through the typical sequence, the attacker's playbook?
Yeah, it's often a masterclass in psychological manipulation, really. It nearly always begins with that initial contact. Often they're impersonating someone trusted your bank, maybe tech support from a big company, sometimes even a government agency. And the hooks, they're always urgent, always playing on fear. Things like, your account's been compromised, or there's an urgent refund waiting, or we've detected suspicious activity, we need to verify. They prey on that fear, that instinct we all have to act quickly when we think something's wrong.
Right, create that sense of panic. And once that urgency is established, the victim is then sort of steered towards the tooling step. Is that right? How do they actually bridge that gap from the psychological manipulation to getting actual technical control?
Exactly. So the victim, now probably a bit panicked, right? They're persuaded to install a remote access app. Or maybe just accept a browser-based screen sharing session, something that sounds helpful. And once that remote connection is live, that's when the guided actions really begin. The attacker literally directs the victim. Okay, now log into your bank account so we can check. Can you read me the code that just popped up?
Wow.
Yeah. Or even guiding them to move funds, all under the guise of securing the account or catching the bad guys. And then finally, there's often a cleanup phase. The fraudster might try to reduce traces, delete logs, that sort of thing, and they'll often pressure the victim into silence. Don't tell anyone for security reasons, which just isolates the victim further and, crucially, delays detection. It's a complete hijacking of trust, of the device, and ultimately of their digital identity.
Truly chilling when you lay it out like that. And it brings up a critical question. If these scams are so sophisticated and they exploit such fundamental human trust, why are they so successful at evading our existing security measures? What are the sort of the common blind spots in our traditional controls?
Yeah, this is where the strategic gaps really become clear for security teams. See, many security tools focus on perimeter defenses or maybe anomaly detection based on attacker attributes, weird IP addresses, known bad devices, things like that. But these remote access scams, they sidestep these controls in, I'd say, three really significant ways. First, there's the user-assisted MFA bypass. We touched on this. The victim provides the second factor. They type the code, they approve the push notification. So your system registers a successful MFA login. It thinks, great, security check passed.
Checkbox ticked.
Exactly, checkbox tick. Because the challenge was technically met. It's not a flaw in the MFA technology itself. It's that social engineering masterclass turning your strongest control into, well, an unwitting accomplice.
So the system essentially sees the user logging in normally. It has no idea they're being actively manipulated by a fraudster who's basically looking over their shoulder, digitally speaking.
Precisely. That's the first bypass. Second, we have this paradox. Same device, new behavior. The fraudster is operating from the victim's own device, their laptop, their phone. So the IP address often looks fine. The device fingerprint usually looks normal. It's a trusted device. Your security systems see the user's familiar hardware. But the actual session behavior, the sequence of actions, the mouse movements maybe, navigation patterns, it's completely off. It's anomalous. But many systems aren't looking at that granular behavioral level, especially in real time through the browser. It's like having a phantom limb controlling the account. It looks like the user, but it's not. And then third, there's the low noise credential theft. Attackers aren't always acting immediately. Sometimes they use the access just to harvest credentials for later replay. This minimizes the number of failed login attempts that would normally trigger your rate-based rules or suspicious activity flags. They're not trying to brute force the door down. They're politely taking the keys from the user and waiting for the right moment to use them.
Wow. Okay, so that's a triple threat, really.
Yeah.
Exploiting trust, exploiting the device's legitimacy, and doing it stealthily. Now, beyond the obvious individual financial hit, which could be devastating, what's the broader enterprise impact? For the CISOs listening, for their organizations, I know the numbers involved are, well, they're staggering.
They really are sobering. Just looking at the U.S., the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, the IC3, they reported total online crime losses hitting $12.5 billion in 2023. And projections for 2024 are already looking like they'll exceed $16 billion. And within that, tech support scams and customer support impersonation, which heavily involve remote access, are major categories. If you look at Australia, similar story. $256 million in losses attributed just to remote access scams in 2023. Another $106 million already this year. It's huge.
Those are really eye-watering figures. Yeah. But the pain for organizations, it goes far beyond just those direct financial losses, doesn't it? There are other costs involved.
Oh, absolutely. Way beyond. You've got the direct fraud losses. Sure, maybe reimbursements you have to make. But then there's the significant operational drag. And this isn't just, an abstract term. This is the real hidden cost of countless SOC analyst hours spent trying to triage alerts that frankly can't easily differentiate legitimate user activity from these attacker-guided sessions. It's the increased burden on your fraud teams, your customer support teams, dealing with disputes, calming upset customers. It erodes internal team morale, too, facing these relentless, sophisticated attacks day in, day out. And then, layered on top of that, you have the regulatory and reputational exposure when victims start reporting that your brand was impersonated or that your systems didn't provide adequate warnings. That erodes customer trust fast. It can lead to compliance headaches, regulatory scrutiny. It directly impacts your brand impersonation protection efforts and just your overall standing in the market. It's a multifaceted hit.
Okay, so this is clearly a complex landscape, a real challenge. Where do we start to shine a light on these hidden paths? What can security teams actually do proactively? Specifically, let's talk about intervening early at, or maybe even before, the login stage to try and interrupt these scam scripts.
Right. This is where we really need to shift gears. From being reactive, cleaning up the mess, to getting truly proactive. And the focus has to be on signals and interventions that act early in the chain. We absolutely need remote session indicators that operate right down at the browser level. This means having the capability to detect patterns consistent with remote control software running or screen sharing activity happening during the session, in real time. This raises the risk profile of that specific session immediately, hopefully before any real damage is done. And, innovative platforms are now actually able to see these subtle real-time signals from the browser things that traditional server-side controls just they just can't see.
Okay, so that's a key shift then. Not just looking at what's happening on the server or the network traffic, but getting visibility into what's actually unfolding moment by moment on the user's device through their browser experience.
Yeah.
That does sound like a game changer.
It really is. And another crucial layer to add is suspicious login pattern detection, but smarter detection. It's about correlating multiple signals. Device posture, yes, but also session context. Maybe recent exposure to known phishing sites? Using all that to flag potentially high-risk logins, including ones that might be coming through man-in-the-middle phishing kits, for example. And then, of course, there's geolocation anomaly detection. Pretty standard, but still vital. Using location signals to surface things like impossible travel or unexpected remote activity during an authentication flow. If a user logs in successfully from New York and then 2 minutes later there's sensitive activity initiated from, say, Southeast Asia within that same session.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag.
Huge red flag. That demands immediate attention, probably a step-up challenge, maybe even a session termination.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, what else? What else can be done to really disrupt the attack chain? Maybe even render those stolen credentials useless if they do get harvested.
Yeah, so here's where things get really quite ingenious, I think. We can talk about decoy credential injection. Imagine an attacker does manage to lure a user to a perfectly crafted spoofed site. They think they're harvesting real credentials. But if you can detect that spoof site, you can actually swap the credentials entered there with useless decoys before they even reach the attacker. So if the attacker then tries to replay those harvested but actually decoy credentials on your genuine site, bam, you detect it instantly, you block it. The stolen data is rendered completely unusable. It effectively poisons the well for the attacker and gives you great threat intel.
That's clever.
It is. And beyond that, we absolutely need to leverage user-facing warnings. But not just generic pop-ups. We need targeted, plain language alerts displayed in the moment that directly interrupt the scammer's script. Warning, a remote session is active. Your bank will never ask you to log in while sharing your screen. Do not proceed. Something direct like that. And for sessions flagged as high risk through those other signals we talked about, policy-driven step-up becomes essential. Automatically requiring additional verification, maybe a different MFA factor, maybe a quick callback before allowing account access or any sensitive profile changes. It buys you and the user that crucial moment to intervene.
These all sound like really powerful proactive strategies. Okay, so for the CISOs listening right now, if you had to boil it down, what are the absolute key best practices? Like a concise roadmap maybe to truly enhance their security posture against these evolving threats?
Okay, yeah, a roadmap. My top recommendations for CISOs and their teams would probably be these. First, instrument the login more deeply. Go beyond just server-side checks. Add those browser-level checks specifically for remote control signals, screen sharing indicators, and correlate that with your broader device risk assessment. Second, tune your suspicious login rules. Don't just look for failed attempts. Focus specifically on patterns that indicate user-assisted MFA bypass, that successful login following unusual activity. Third, deploy those in-session warnings. Make them specific to remote access scams. And crucially, make sure they reference your brand's official guidance and contact channels so they're instantly credible to a potentially panicked user.
Right, so making those warnings super contextual, clearly branded, so they don't just get dismissed as, yet another generic security alert people click through.
Exactly right. Context is everything there. Fourth, strongly consider using decoy credentials. As we discussed, it's a really powerful way to neutralize harvested data and get solid attribution on replay attempts. Fifth, make sure you integrate these new insights with your existing fraud engine. High-risk session flags should automatically trigger your step-up verification workflows before any sensitive profile changes or high-value transactions can proceed. Connect the dots. And finally, don't forget the human element on your side. Educate your support agents. They're often the first line of defense when a victim calls in, maybe even during an attack. They need to be trained to recognize the red flags of a remote access scam in progress and know exactly how to escalate it correctly, safely.
This all really underscores a fundamental shift, doesn't it? Moving away from relying solely on legacy, often after-the-fact investigations, toward a much more session-aware, real-time intervention approach. It feels like that's where the maximum leverage really lies, intervening while the scam script is actually unfolding.
That's precisely it. You've hit the nail on the head. The point of maximum leverage, maximum impact, is catching these threats in the act. It's really about empowering your security team with the visibility to see what was previously invisible. Giving them the tools to disrupt that manipulation in real time and proactively securing your organization before one of these hidden paths to account takeover becomes a devastating reality for both the customer and the business.
Well, thank you so much for that incredibly insightful deep dive into remote access scams. It's certainly clear that while these threats are complex, they are constantly evolving. There are powerful, proactive, real-time detection methods and intervention strategies available now, and these offer a really measurable path forward to securing your organization and, just as importantly, building and maintaining that critical digital trust with your users. So if you're listening and thinking about how to empower your own security posture against these kinds of sophisticated threats, and perhaps you want to see how some innovative solutions can actually put these proactive protection strategies into practice, we'd invite you to explore a bit further. You can easily book a demo, for instance, to see the MemcyCo solution in action. Discover how it might help fortify your specific defenses against these types of attacks. It's a light way to just see what's possible. Thank you once again for listening to the MemcycoFM show. We look forward to our next deep dive with you.